Disaster has struck the forces of the coalition in northern Italy. The French army of Italy, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, marched from Piedmont into Milan to engage the coalition forces there, the combined army of British and Austrian armies. The French were reinforced by troops coming in from Baden-Württemberg. 2 cavalry units have managed to arrive to assist in the battle, but the 3 infantry divisions dispatched across the Swiss mountains, 2 of them fell apart due to attrition of the mountain crossing, and the 3rd one couldn't force march his way to the Milanese territory and into battle there. Despite the lack of the infantry units reinforcing the French divisions, the French were decisively victorious and defeated the Austrian forces, who retreated towards Tyrol. The Austrians lost artillery, 2 artillery units, 2 cavalry units, and 1 elite infantry, and the survivors gathered in Tyrol. Nonetheless, the Austrian position, though weakened on the southern flank, is still strong in the middle, with the largest army in Europe existing in Bavaria, led by the Austrian forces. This is a situation for the Austrians, where they have a weakened southern flank, their center flank is strong, the ocean waves are still belong to the coalition forces, and they're faced with a bit of a quandary of decisions, a crossroads. Do they press towards Paris with their great army in Bavaria, at the risk of potentially losing battles towards Vienna to Napoleon's army? Which should they do? Should they move one direction while Napoleon moves the other, or should they reinforce southwards towards Tyrol to lump up into a large grand army in hopes of throwing back any opposition? Welcome friends and gamers, my name is Jinx and we're playing our turn number 3 here, which is June 1796, and this is the coalition's turn. At the end of this turn and the subsequent French one, we'll do a little production turn, so it'll be at the end of the French one, where we'll purchase some units for the coalition forces. Now, we could always place our units in territories that we control, and the British can actually send the entirety of their income, or a portion of their income, to their allies. So the amount of money that would be spent is roughly equivalent of, well, it's 28 for the Austrians, 28 for the British, and my thinking is for their purchases at the end of the subsequent French turn, it's going to be something like this. An artillery for 12, cavalry for 10, and an infantry for 3. That works up to 28 over here. And the British will have the same amount of money to spend, but they're going to get 3 infantry for themselves and buy the Austrians a cavalry unit. Now let's take a look at the board again, because I did want to point that out, that the situation might actually work favorably enough for us, because we can build our units right in our territory here, kind of defensively. Of course, the French can do the same thing, which means that we'll be faced off against a quite supreme enemy, but at the very least, we are not too terribly concerned that if Napoleon and his forces move southwards towards Vienna, we'll still have a strong enough force to throw them off. Our force here in Germany, in Bavaria, we're debating on what they should be doing in this situation. We outnumber the forces in Lorraine by a considerable margin, but perhaps we'll advance forwards, as was recommended by our commentators, to Baden-Baden in hopes of potentially drawing some French forces there, while at the same time keeping a strong force presence in Vienna. That's the hope, that's the desire on what to do with the Austrian turn. Now, as I've mentioned in the other videos, I'm trying to do the coalition by the suggestions of what the audience wishes to do, and I think that'll be kind of fun. I know it won't always be, because you guys won't have access to all the information at hand, but it will be kind of the best judgment of what everybody does. I really dislike playing against myself, but this is one of those games that you almost have to, just by the nature of the tactical battles. So, what we're going to do, as well as recommended by our commentators, is move our forces from Bavaria into Baden-Württemberg, and that's what we'll do right now. Our 2 cavalry units will move up as well. Sorry, this unit here is just a token force. The bulk of their force is actually on a little task force marker sitting over here. That's 13 infantry, 2 artillery, and 1 cavalry here. Here we have a heavy cavalry, another regular cavalry, artillery, and elite infantry sitting in Baden-Württemberg right now. As for these forces here in Tyrol, they're exposed to Napoleon's push if they decide to go that direction. So what we'll do is we'll pull them back into Vienna in the hopes that if the enemy does come after us, we are still strong enough to resist any forced march by the enemy, and also with reinforcements coming in, we'll have a sufficiently strong presence in Vienna. Hopefully we're not making a mistake on that front. Like I said, I have a tough time playing against myself. And now we turn to the British Navy, and this is somewhat of a deceptively complex situation. So the way navies work is I can engage them in port. So I could send 2 ships in there, but they get a +2 on their dice. So it's 2 dice for these guys, but I get +1 on the dice roll due being British, and 2 dice for the French with a +2 by being in port. So I also get a +1 for having more ships in them. So it's a +2, +3 in total, and then these guys get +1 for having 1 ship, +2 for being in port. So it's +3 versus +3. And at the end of the day, that's not a huge difference in dice rolls. And the way the nature of battles work in the Navy is if you have more pips than them, then they take off casualties. So something like that. So there could only ever be, per round of naval combat, only 1 person taking off units off the board. I'll just quickly show you what it looks like here, if that makes any sense. Oops, knocking over a cup. Naval battles, 2 dice versus 2 dice. +2 for import, +1 for defending in fleet, and then +1 for every naval squadron in the area. That way you kind of get the idea what it looks like. Hold on, did I make that right? Yeah. So it's not a great odds battle. Okay, so that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is what to do with them in the meantime, because the idea there is we don't want to expose all of our British islands to any potential French attacks. Let's say I move this fleet out of position, then the French in some case can come up here and start dropping troops off anywhere along the British islands. So we're going to do that. So the risk is that they will. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send 1 extra naval unit up there just to start us off. And I'll explain why, because alternatively what I would do is move this fleet, say, perhaps to the Adriatic Sea off the coast or between Italy and Greece. And then I could drop some troops off here as the British, right? So perhaps I move in, let's say, 3 units here, 1, 2, 3, and I could drop off 3 units in Illyria. But the problem there, of course, is now that the French can get me with the entirety of their fleet, with 5 units coming into here, engaging my 5 units. And again, that's somewhat of a steep dice roll. Alternatively, the French can give up on that fleet and instead send this 1 unit here plus these 4 units to engage the British here at even odds. And that's again a difficult one. So what I'm going to do is play it somewhat safe and move 2 of these ships from the Mediterranean Sea up to that sea zone and move these 3 ships, actually make that just 2 ships, into the North Sea. And then from, I know the camera's not really zoomed in, and then from Ireland and London, I'm going to attack Holland with the force from Hanover as well. And perhaps that will do some damage against the enemy. And this way our fleet here is quite substantially strong that the French won't go there, but of course it exposes the entirety of the Mediterranean to any French attacks. Now, what would the French potentially do? They could potentially attack these territories, Algeria being one of them, collecting, well, they wouldn't collect any income there, they'd have to put down their political action point. Or potentially the French could land in Egypt and that kind of thing again. And again, they would make an enemy in that case because they're going to go to war against the Ottomans. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Alternatively, they could go into Sicily and Naples, which are neutral nations. But I don't know if they would do that. I don't know if that would be the key action for them. So I think this is what we'll do, just a simple attack up here in Holland for the British forces. And I'll quickly set up a little battlefield here. So it's 3 units of infantry attacking 1 French unit. Should be quite quick and decisive. Actually, why am I doing that? I'll just grab them off the board. Now, amphibious assaults unfortunately mean that the French infantry get a +1. But it might not matter too much because I might be able to wipe them out in a single round of combat. So I'm going to roll my dice here for the attacking forces, hoping to roll a 9 or up. There's 10. This is a 7, so 1 success. Let's see what the roll is here. A 4. We force him to retreat. Now, he's forced to retreat, and that means we are victorious in the battlefield, and the pursuing units get to roll. So I have 3 dice rolls here, and I'm targeting their infantry, so 3 at 6, with no successes there. So the French do manage to retreat from Holland, and the British are successful in capturing it. So there's that. Now, the French are going to move into Belgium, and the 3 units here are going to land in Holland and liberate that. Well, I guess I can't quite liberate that territory, but we can at least march into that territory here. And there we have it. That's the situation for these guys. Now, no action cards trades hands because that was a minor battle. And I believe that will about do it. So we'll conclude the production phase at the end of the French turn. My read of the rules says that it happens at the end of the French turn, and I think that kind of makes sense, but it doesn't explicitly say. It's one of those things, the rules are a little bit vague on the subject. But okay, let me give a roundup of what the situation here is. I have 7 British Navy units up here. I have 2 British Navy units in the North Sea, 3 infantry in Holland. The French have 1 in Belgium, 1 in Paris, and 1 in Brittany. Over here we have 4 French units. In Marseille we have 1. We have in Lorraine, the French have 5 regular infantry, 2 light infantry, 1 elite infantry, 3 artillery. That's what's in Lorraine. The Austrians in Baden-Württemberg have 13 regular infantry, 3 artillery, 2 light cavalry, 1 heavy cavalry, and 1 elite infantry. So a substantial force. In Switzerland, the French have 1. In Milan, we have 3 regular infantry, 1 light, 1 elite, 2 regular cavalry, and 1 heavy cavalry, Napoleon, and 1 artillery. And then, of course, we have in Vienna, we have the presence of 7 infantry, and that about does it. Now, we don't have any action cards stored for the Austrians or the British. On the diplomatic chart, we have a +1 on our dice rolls to influence Prussia into the combat, and political action points that Great Britain has 1 over there. So at the end of this production phase, the British will have 2 political action points, the Austrians 1, and they could attempt to use that to push the Prussians 1 step further in their direction. So that's the situation as we see it. I believe that's it, gents. So thank you all for watching, and that is the conclusion of this. I have to extend my apology for taking long to do this turn. I've been working out of town for the last few days, and so I'm a little bit behind on a lot of my projects. Thank you all. Cheers!